This is episode 24 of Objectively Biased on the dawn of the NBA postseason. This is Wilder Adams alongside John Tortorelli today. And John, we're here finally, man. What are you feeling today?
I'm feeling great. Yesterday is one of my favorite days of the NBA calendar. And forget the NBA, it's one of my favorite days of the year. Every single season, we have this 82-game slate that leads us to what is day one of the postseason. And I felt like we had some good games. We had some unexpected turnouts, especially for the last game. I didn't anticipate Minnesota to belt ass, and they did. But I really enjoyed my favorite team, the Denver Nuggets, outdueling the Clippers, and what was a roller coaster display. And Russell Westbrook was, to me, he was taking my heart, and the very next play, he was making a decision that had me equally dumbfounded. So, an amazing day. I was screaming. I was having, I would say, one of my favorite moments for the first day of the postseason.
Russell Westbrook, the whole story of his career is like successfully failing. And that's what happened last night. It felt like at the end of that game. It's like, dude, you can't make a shot. He makes most boneheaded decisions. And then all of a sudden, like the defense is on point, especially late in the game. That was a great game. And period, point blank, I think just the weekend in which you just have one, kind of like Christmas, when you have like one game at a time from 10 o'clock to like 10 p.m., that's one of my favorite things. And just the vibe of day one of the postseason. As you mentioned, there was a lot of good basketball yesterday. Obviously, we can't victory lap over one game, regardless of what side you're on in which game. But I thought it gave pretty good signs of what these teams are good at and what they struggle with. And, of course, the playoffs are all about adjustments. So who is going to adjust? And that's the chess match. That's the chess match that the best coaches in the NBA have to play. Some of the best stars in the NBA have to accomplish. So I'm very curious to see just for game one yesterday, because we have game ones today as well.
Yep.
How teams respond game two, game three, game four, etc.
Yeah, it was really also an opportunity to see some teams for what they have been all year long. The first game I want to talk about is Pacers Bucks, where Milwaukee all season long has felt like a broken team that doesn't have a great lineup put together. They have shooters, but the shooters don't bring energy, and their guys with size don't bring versatility. And some of them can shoot, but maybe they can't in these big games consistently be counted on by Giannis. And I felt in the Pacers matchup, it was the perfect example. Giannis starts off the game, goes absolutely ballistic in the first half, finishes with 30 plus, and even still, it was one of the biggest supporting cast mismatches I've seen in recent years between two teams. You have the likes of Miles Turner having a great consistent night, and then role players like Andrew Nembhard, who last year was a big playoff riser in the Pacers conference finals run, hitting shots consistently. And I felt watching the entire game, it's hard to say Giannis is going to be here next season given just how much Milwaukee is lacking. Kyle Kuzma, I mean, one of the craziest trades of the deadline was the Bucks moving Chris Middleton, who last year in the series averaged 25 points on good efficiency coming off injury, and packaging him with A.J. Johnson, a pick swap, for a guy in Kyle Kuzma who did not post a single stat last night.
Tony Snell, you're saved. You're saved.
It was a Tony Snell vintage performance where all he was doing was cardio. And I believe I'm John Horst looking at that product, and then Doc Rivers, who has the worst media skills in the entire NBA of any coach, lashing out on reporters saying Kyle Kuzma can play, defending his player, which I agree with, but kind of showing an emotional, impulsive side to him where he feels defensive. And I feel like for Milwaukee, you're seeing some cracks which were displayed all year long. And Damian Lillard, to me, is not going to fix much of this.
Yeah, they're in such a tough position. I was talking about it last night on the Debate Room podcast. And the scary thing with this Bucks team right now, you look at it and it's like, no disrespect to Ryan Rollins. He's starting in a playoff game with Giannis Antetokounmpo on the team. That can't happen. 2018 Cleveland Cavaliers did not have the issue like that of that extreme. So the depth, the top-end talent, of course, Kyle Kuzma, I think we're just kind of seeing at this point of his career, he's a losing player. You can put him on the Washington Wizards, and he can put up stats. This year he wasn't, which made the trade even more concerning, right? The year before, he was giving them 22-7 and solid efficiency. This year he was struggling to give 15 on the Washington Wizards, and they still make that swap. And it didn't propel him at all to be on the Milwaukee Bucks. And game one is an absolute shell of himself. That's concerning because he kind of needs to be the Austin Reeves of the Milwaukee Bucks. That's the problem with that game, right? So that's what scares me about the Bucks. It's just they don't have the top end talent, and with the way the modern CBA is built, Giannis Antetokounmpo, you're looking at your team. Missing Damian Lillard with 2 supermaxes on the roster, it's like missing a lung. So that's problematic. But you look top and down the roster. How do you fix this? They don't have many picks to trade. They don't have many intriguing young players. The most intriguing young player they put in the trade to Washington. So the Bucks, my question for the rest of this series is, one, they have no chance to win without Damian Lillard. But because Indiana plays so fast, and the moment you play, you have to have your cardio up against the Indiana Pacers. Mm-hmm. How does Damian Lillard, with the condition he was in recently, how does he just ease into that flow and just save the day for a top-heavy Milwaukee Bucks team?
It counts on the entire supporting cast is bringing more energy. I think that goes with Kuzma and Taurean Prince, where you're asking them to be someone and players that they're not in their careers. I mean, Taurean Prince shot the cover off the ball this year, but he's not giving you really any value in the defensive end. And that was kind of evident in a game where Tyrese Halliburton goes 3 of 13 from the field, posts 10 points, went 0 of 7 from three-point land. To me, and those types of matchups where Halliburton is all from downtown, that's where the supporting cast should be at their best, when they're stepping up. And even if you're on the road in that tough atmosphere in Indiana, because their crowd was rocking Giannis at the foul line, they're doing the count all the way up to 10. But even at the end of the day, for Halliburton to be as off as he was yesterday, and for that to not matter really at all, I don't really think there's any formula for the Bucks, because you look at the roster, there's a decent amount of rotation players. I thought Ryan Rollins was actually solid yesterday defensively.
He was fine, yeah. Yeah, he was fine.
Shooting well. But none of them really click. And there's not enough time in the season for them to machinate the right lineups. And I also don't think Doc Rivers is a great cook with the ingredients that he was given.
Yeah, it's this Bucks team. They're back against the wall for a couple years now, because we saw in that Miami series a couple years ago, that nucleus they had wasn't enough. And they had to pivot. And going for a Damian Lillard for the package it was, I would say it was a pretty calculated move. But it doesn't mean that Damian Lillard, who doesn't have a championship or anything past being swept in the conference finals, was going to come in and save the day for the Milwaukee Bucks. So they put a lot on Damian Lillard and Giannis Antetokounmpo to kind of do everything for them, and their bench isn't enough. The Bucks, the biggest problem is they haven't drafted well. They just haven't. AJ Johnson might be something. He's shown really good signs this year, but by the time he is something, it'll be past this current window they have. And this year's draft class had a lot of solid day one role players, even in the 20s, and they didn't take one of them. And you look back, who's the best draft pick they made? I mean, in the last few years, is it AJ Green? I mean, it's like, seriously, who's the best draft pick that the Bucks have made in the last 5 years?
Yeah, and the picks that they have hit on, they've all let go of. 2016, you get Malcolm Brogdon in the second round. They had to let him go for financial reasons. Dante DiVincenzo let go of because of injuries, and he also was shooting poorly, and they kind of gave up on him at the worst time, because then he goes to Golden State and the Knicks, and he starts to blossom. And then most recently, AJ Johnson wasn't a great fit because he was a developmental prospect. He was kind of aligned with a team like the Wizards, who would give him a long leash to make mistakes, develop with in-game reps. But once the Bucks made that decision, you're better off sticking with him opposed to buying a car and then selling it right after you drive it out the lot. And that's exactly what John Horst did. And the lack of leverage that he positioned himself with was dumbfounding, considering Chris Middleton last year in the postseason. I get the durability concerns, but we see right now with Kawhi Leonard, if you can get a guy to the April and late May parts of a season, forget about the regular season. This is one of the top 3 duos in terms of chemistry and continuity. Him and Giannis clicked. And I feel like to have to add multiple assets to swap Middleton for Kuzma is a move that gets a GM fired. And especially when it's a franchise legend who was just a championship number 2 not too long ago. I think this entire conversation, it makes us overlook just how good the Pacers are. Last year, they go to the conference finals, and everybody kind of turned a blind eye to it because they dealt with injured teams. But This is the second year in a row they're showing they can raise their level of play in the postseason. They won more games this year. They're healthy with Benedict Mathurin and Jarris Walker both contributing where they did not last year. And to me, I look at them and you can make a strong case they're the third best team in the West when you have not only Miles Turner, with as much as he's improved as a three-point shooter and offensive player, but then Pascal Siakam playing a nearly flawless game, 25 points, missed 5 shots, just 15 attempts to get there, 1 turnover on the entire day, and just being a strong connector. I feel like he's continuing to grow as well. And that front court is one of, if not the most underrated in the NBA.
You nailed it. They're the third best team in the Eastern Conference. And this might sound funny because people won't believe me on this. Yesterday, I woke up and I made my conference predictions, and I did it rolling out of my bed. And I just wrote Bucks in 7, and I posted it. And I was like, I meant Pacers in 7. You know what? I'm just going to leave it. So I'm going to stick with Bucks in 7 on pure accident. But they are the third best team in the Eastern Conference, like 100%. So the pace they play with, the ball movement, I just think they have the most guys outside of the top 2 teams in the Eastern Conference who can do something with the basketball. It's that simple. Rick Carlisle, in my opinion, is one of the most underrated coaches in the NBA. He's a champion, and every single year, if he's your head coach, you're winning basketball games. Those 2 simple criterias make him one of the 5 to 10 best coaches in the entire NBA. He's got the perfect system for Halliburton, who started slow this year, but now he's looking like one of the very best point guards in the NBA. Minimum, in my opinion, the third best point guard in the East. Might be higher. Depends on if you preferred Halliburton or Cunningham. But I do think Halliburton, even yesterday, didn't score a lot. I thought he controlled the game. Controlled the game. Was efficient, made the right read every time, let other guys cook, and that's what makes Halliburton great. He can play winning basketball, whether he drops 30, whether he drops 6, literally. And this Bucks, I mean, you mentioned it. I mean, you can go off his bench. It's like, okay, here's Benedict Mathurin. Andrew Nembhard starts, but, you know, these role players. McConnell and Benedict Mathurin's a bucket, and they just have the most. It's kind of, it's funny. We'll go to the Timberwolves-Lakers series later, but it's kind of like the Timberwolves and Lakers series where it's like the Bucks probably have 2 of the best players in the series, arguably. I'll take Halliburton over Dame.
I would too.
I might take Siakam over Dame, but you can argue Dame is the second best player in the series. And in that scenario, it's like, okay, but then who's like the next 8? And it's all Indiana players probably. So I think the depth and the continuity and the coaching and everybody could just space and shoot, and they're just built to run. And top-heavy teams are just not built to really resist that. So I think they're a bigger threat than the Knicks, and I'm sure we'll talk about them soon.
We will. And Halliburton's is the best playmaker or best decision maker in the NBA. And when you're already an elite passer that kind of sees the court so well, it's what allows him, like you highlighted on a bad shooting night, to kind of control the flow of the offense in ways that elite point guards do. And I'm not going to say it's equal to Chris Paul or Steve Nash, but there's a resemblance of their games, which I believe NBA fans have completely overlooked because we got to bag on Halliburton a little bit because he gets thrown into these conversations of MVP caliber guards. And then he deals with a hamstring injury and he starts to play poorly and posts a 0-point game in January. Next thing you know, his reputation starts to get damaged a little bit. But I felt yesterday that was a great example. 12 assists to just 1 turnover. And that is what allows the Pacers with elite shooting or very good shooting and high level play finishing to kind of magnify what he's already great at.
And Halliburton, we were just way too over the top on the Halliburton nonsense because he didn't have an offseason to get healthy. He had an injury last January 2024 on the hamstring. He doesn't get that offseason, plays for the Olympics, and comes right back in. Why are we surprised it took him some time to ease in on that when he didn't have a full offseason? Hamstrings are very unpredictable. They could last for 2 days or 2 years. You never really know with hamstrings. So we saw in the second half of the year, when he's healthy, he's going to give you an efficient 20. He's going to give you 10 assists. He's not turning over the ball. He's going to bring a pace and a style very few players in the NBA bring. And he's the entire identity of this Pacers team. Even as good as Siakam is, I still would take Halliburton as the best player on this team. And I think going forward, I think the series is probably going to be fairly quick unless Damian Lillard does the coolest thing ever. I mean, the coolest thing ever, and talks crap to Halliburton last game, and then comes back despite his condition and just dominates the series. Unless that happens, which would be one of the coolest stories in the NBA, the Pacers are going to win this quickly. And yeah, I think they're the third biggest threat in the East.
Yeah, I had the Pacers in 7. Right now, I'm feeling like it's Pacers in 6. Shall we talk about the next game, which I felt like was probably my favorite playoff game in years? Nuggets Clippers. I
Nuggets.
want you to start. I want to get your impression first and kind of build off of that.
This is the game I couldn't watch very much, but
Okay.
I'll say this. I saw the first quarter. James Harden lost his mind. I saw the end of the game. Russell Westbrook closes it out. And it's interesting because I still would pick the Clippers to win the series, but just from information I've gathered and talking to some people, it sounds like some of the biggest issues, especially in the beginning, right? Harden's going crazy. Kawhi Leonard, after the first quarter, is a little bit lethargic, struggling with double teams, struggling with those reads. Zubac maybe cool down a little bit and things of that nature. And here's the thing. One thing I noticed even late in the game, the Clippers are so focused on overcrowding Nikola Jokic, doubling him, trapping him. And that's just the dumbest thing ever. That is a malpractice by Ty Lue. Because Nikola Jokic, if you're doubling the MF, you're playing to his favor. Because Nikola Jokic wants to move the ball. He wants to pass. If you're trying to stop him from getting 29, 30, you're just playing an impossible game. Right? You're trying to fly without wings. It's just that was a mistake. And it let everybody else get going. Aaron Gordon goes crazy. Jamal Murray goes crazy. And
In the right moments, because Jamal Murray, he started the game 4-15. It was killing me, but he had a few of the biggest shots the other day.
okay, so I saw that late. Okay,
Mhm.
so thank you for that.
Of
But
course.
he looked like he was going crazy.
He
and
was
that's
in the fourth.
Yeah, Jamal Murray, that's the most Jamal Murray thing ever. Goes 3 for 16 and 7 for 20, and it just goes crazy. But yeah, it just, when you double Nikola Jokic, you're going to get other players going. And that's how the Denver Nuggets are that well-oiled machine. The Timberwolves last year, what they did well was they said, Karl Anthony Towns, guard Nikola Jokic one-on-one. If he drops 35, great. We just don't want the guy to have 10 assists. And they let him get his typical triple-double. And I think at the end of the day, if you're not executing late in games, if Kawhi Leonard is struggling to get doubled and Nikola Jokic is playing to his strengths, you're going to lose the game. I trust Ty Lue to make adjustments. Unless he's a fool, he's not going to double Nikola Jokic nearly as much as they did game one. And then after that, hopefully the clutch game offense late is stronger, which I trust with Kawhi Leonard still. Then the Clippers can get back going. But it was just a poorly executed game that just, I blame a lot on the coach.
That's understandable. I felt the Nuggets were, to me, in no sort of control to start this game. They're down by 14 points in the second quarter. And like you highlighted, it kind of became clear to me very early on that the Nuggets don't have a one-on-one answer for James Harden off the dribble. Christian Brown was caught lacking low, upright in his stance. And quite frankly, he's a very good off-ball defender. He had back-to-back pick sixes for transition dunks. And that helped the Nuggets turn what was a 14-point deficit into a 2-possession game to close the second quarter. And going into the second half, the Nuggets were continuing to chip away in this back-and-forth affair, but they never actually took the lead until the very end. And that is where David Allen, I felt, made a very risky decision. And that was, even with the Nuggets down, sitting MPJ for the entirety of the second half of this game, basically, to roll with Russell Westbrook. And that's where the Clippers were double teaming Nikola Jokic. Chris Dunn and James Harden were helping him, basically daring the Nuggets to let him hit open threes. And the biggest shot of the game was Russell Westbrook to take the lead with about 18 seconds left.
Yep.
And I felt like in that moment, for an interim coach to make that decision, it could have backfired pretty poorly if he misses that shot. And to kind of epitomize what has been Russ in this sort of matchup, the Nuggets relied on him down the stretch because him and Aaron Gordon had 9 offensive rebounds. And in a game where the Nuggets cannot hit a shot from deep, MPJ had 3 points, Jamal Murray starts 4 of 15, you need to win on the margins. And one thing that Nikola Jokic doesn't get praised for, he's diving on every loose ball. Aaron Gordon is attacking the rim with maniacal intent. He's attacking, he's getting downhill, and then when Jamal is, or not when Jamal is getting doubled, but when Jamal is kicking it to Nikola, and that second defender comes, Russell Westbrook has done, and this was something that happened a lot in Houston when they traded Clint Capella, a very underrated job of finding the shallow soft spot of a defense and seeing that dunker spot and then getting good angles for good looks at the rim. And you know that Jokic is going to find him 10 times out of 10. And I feel like in this sort of game, what the Clippers realized, like you said, is that they're better off letting Nikola go one-on-one with Zubats because it wasn't easy in the post. I mean,
No.
Zoo has the size, he has the strength, and he has good enough length to just contain him. And Jokic did get some very tough makes on him, but they were very contested. And we saw last year in the Minnesota series, it wasn't reliable enough for the Nuggets to just will their way to the next round. So I felt in this game, the Nuggets wanted more. The crowd was going insane. You felt like it was a home playoff game. And I loved it because Russ, even though he made some mistakes, he was a little bit tentative on the last play of the fourth quarter. It's again, Chris Dunn helping and then doubling Nikola Jokic from his backside. Opposed to the Russell Westbrook, the standing behind the three-point line, taking a catch and shoot three, just hit from the corner, he immediately cuts off the catch, and then he realizes that there's a defender there, and we don't get a shot off before the end of regulation. Then I didn't get too mad because I played possession before, but I think that kind of emphasized that the Nuggets can't count on him to close every game. And if they want to win the series, they need Michael Porter Jr. to be way better than what he was yesterday, because one of the worst contracts in the NBA right now is Michael Porter Jr. If I'm paying you $179 million and on my championship run, I had to go to Bruce Brown off the bench, and now I'm going to Russell Westbrook, who we brought in this offseason when no other team wanted him, and he is outproducing you and being more impactful in the clutch. And these key spots where Nicola's getting double teamed, you have you on the bench, despite being one of the league's best shooters. I believe that is the questionable part about this Nugget team, because Jamal Murray showed up in the fourth quarter. Aaron Gordon has been reliable. Christian Brown made enough winning plays. But it's MPJ's intensity and attention to detail that, as a Nugget fan, does drive me crazy, because there's somewhere in there where he plays a lot more tough than he has been. But I feel like he's been checked out at times, and that will be what costs the Nuggets this series. If they're paying $35 million to a player who they can't count on to close games.
Man, stop investing that $35 million for podcasts, man, and show up in the playoffs, my dude. Like, you can't have your $35 million player score 3 points on 1-for-4 shooting. And you mentioned it. That's why they doubled Nikola Jokic, right? They're like, I don't care about MPJ, and they take him out of the game, right?
Yeah.
So that's definitely concerning, and I have no question Jamal Murray is going to show up. There's zero doubt about that for me. I think Aaron Gordon will show up. I mean, the clip, and you mentioned it, the Zubox and the Nikola Jokic thing. If Karl Anthony Towns could guard Nikola Jokic one-on-one, why can't Zubox? Zubox is a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. He has the size and the physicality and kind of the sluggish build that Nikola Jokic does. You have to exploit that and just trust that one-on-one matchup, because it doesn't matter who's on Nikola Jokic's team. He's going to get his 10 assists if you've doubled the guys. So I totally agree with you, and I just think you need more from Kawhi. 9 for 15 looks great on paper, but if you can't navigate doubles and close games late and take over, which we've seen Kawhi Leonard do in the playoffs numerous times over a half a decade ago now, which is crazy to think about. But yeah, I just thought it was poorly executed. But on the Clippers side, I mean, poorly executed game. You lose by 2 in Denver. I think that's somewhat concerning for Denver, but also for the Clippers, who have Ty Lue as a coach, who I do think is a very good coach. They have the opportunity.
He's an elite coach.
Yeah, he's a very good coach.
Oh, you don't think he's elite? Okay.
I don't know. I think a lot of people can win titles with LeBron, but we can move on that.
He's the only coach to bring the Clippers to the conference finals without Kawhi Leonard in that run, by the way. Let's not forget.
He's not Eric Spoelstra. He is not Steve Kerr. I'll stand by that. He's a top 5 coach, but
I think that's elite.
I think we throw the word elite a lot. I don't know. We can rank individually in the future.
5, but okay.
I think he's probably been a little bit screwed over by the lack of health and lack of reliability on the Los Angeles Clippers. So I'm not saying he's not a very good coach. I trust him to adjust game 2, but he has to, because I don't think it was a great coaching game for him. And Kawhi's got to adjust, but I do think at the end of the day, the Clippers are the deeper team to me. I trust them. I think Kawhi Leonard will figure out the doubles and some of the tough looks he's gotten. Like you mentioned, James Harden, who's guarding him on the Denver Nuggets, and then you just go down. Can you get more from Bogdanovich, who gave them absolutely zero, literally? And yeah, I think the Clippers are the slightly deeper team. They should have the matchup for Nikola Jokic. I expect them to defer to guarding Jokic 101, and if they don't do that game too, I'm going to blame Ty Lue for that because they have the personnel for it, and that's how you take out a Nikola Jokic team. Jokic is so damn good at basketball. Just let him get 40. Just let him get 40. You can't do anything about him. Just make sure everybody else doesn't get 80. That's the big problem.
Yeah. The other thing that kind of was questionable is when Tyronn Lue took out Ivica Zubac when Jokic was still on the floor because the Clippers don't have a backup center. Ben Simmons comes in this game, and he's just not a big enough lob threat offensively. So the Nuggets are able to basically, in a playoff setting, Ben Simmons almost at this point doesn't belong. The Nuggets are practically able to just completely ignore him. And I feel like the Clippers bench is a lot deeper. Batum comes in this fourth quarter and hits two crucial no-dip threes. Derrick Jones Jr. was impactful. Bogdan, like you said, expect to play better. And even Amir Coffey is another 40% three-point shooter, doesn't play.
They're
I mean,
deep.
for Nuggets, it's just Russ and then 15 minutes of Peyton Watson. But I think one thing which Tyronn Lue will definitely change moving forward is that Zubac and Jokic's minutes will match. Kawhi only played 36 in this game. I think they're really managing him. And that might be why you don't see him maybe being as intense. I felt like his 7 turnovers was the third most he's had in any game in his career, tied for. A lot of them were very basic, simple cross-court passes that Christian Brown is sitting on. And then he makes it. It's an easy interception for 2 points. So I don't really expect that to be as large of a theme for the rest of the series. I've got the Nuggets in 7. I think it's going to be the best round, the best series in the first. But I'm not going to lie to you. I felt like they were dead in the water in the second quarter. So I don't feel amazing about it. And I know one thing's for sure. If you're counting on Russ, he went 5-17 yesterday, was a +7 and a huge – they don't win that game without Russ.
Yeah.
I feel like if they have to close with him for 5 of these 7 games or 4 of these 7 games, that the Clippers will win the series.
The Clippers just have more options than the Denver Nuggets. That's how I would put it.
Mm-hmm.
If Michael Porter Jr. and Jamal Murray aren't showing up, it's really hard for Denver to really find good substitutions for that. The Clippers have a lot of options. James Harden, Kawhi, they can kill you any given game. Norman Powell, he can drop 30 on a random night. And then you just look down and the defensive options they have, from Chris Dunn to Zubac to go to that bench. I mean, it's a deeper team with more optionality. And game 1 was really poorly executed for the Clippers, and they still were within 2 to finish out the game. So it's not a good thing if it's poorly executed 2 games in a row, but I still trust the veterans. I trust Ty Lue. So I'm still going to keep my pick that the Clippers will win the series, but it's a really good series, and it's going to be, I think, either way because there's never a solution for Nikola Jokic, and I still expect him to ball out.
That's well said. Now, last night, the one game that I was most surprised by was Lakers versus Minnesota. And early in this game, Luka goes off, has 14-plus points in the first quarter. It feels like he's going to have a staple Luka playoff game because this is a generational playoff scorer.
Yeah.
And it didn't seem to matter at all. Can you break down exactly what happened?
Belt to ass. That's what happened. Lakers, fakers, clout shit chasers, rep hand shakers, Wolves in 6, maybe. Yeah, that's been my new motto before the series. But what happened was the Lakers were shell-shocked by Minnesota's intensity, by Minnesota's shot making. Early in the game, Minnesota looked a little tight. They were turning the ball over. Luka was balling out. I mean, they had like 2 balls they just threw out of bounds, cross-court passes. It was weird and ugly, and I think for anybody who has anxiety for that team, including myself, you're just like, uh-oh. Uh-oh, Luka's killing us, and we're throwing the ball to fans. That's not a good sign. But once that bench came in, everything eased in. Dante was shooting well, but Naz Reid and Jaden McDaniels were the difference makers offensively. And they're the 2 players who completely demoralized that team. They shot a combined 9 for 12 from 3. And with the way they were playing, the court was so wide open. And Anthony Edwards, the Lakers, understandably so, said, we're going to trap him, we're going to double him, we're going to have as many bodies around him in the paint as possible and just let other players beat us because the Lakers don't have the personnel to guard him one-on-one. So that's their best hope, which in my opinion, if Anthony Edwards is making those reads, that means the Lakers don't have options because their best bet is to let Minnesota shooters beat them. The problem is Minnesota has 40% shooters from three on their roster, top 5 in three-point makes, top 5 in three-point percentage. So that was the bad bet. And Minnesota tonight, they bit them. And they shot so well that it just felt like the Lakers couldn't really recover both energy-wise. When Minnesota started making those shots, the Lakers' energy went down. A lot of Laker fans have been saying, well, Jaden McDaniels had a fluke game. Naz Reid had a fluke game. One, yeah, McDaniels isn't shooting 11 for 13 every night, but Anthony Edwards isn't shooting 38% from the field every night. Julius Randle isn't going to play that bad every night. Well, maybe he will based on his playoff history, but
yeah,
I don't think he will because he looks composed, and Rudy's not going to have 2 every night. I mean, Minnesota didn't have everybody show up at the same time. They just played harder on both ends of the floor. They moved the ball well, and the players that they wanted to beat them did beat them. And at a certain point, if Dante and Jaden and Naz keep playing well, you're going to have to guard Ant a little lighter than they have. And then it becomes, oh, shoot, playoff Anthony Edwards being guarded by Dorian Finney-Smith or guarded by LeBron or Luka, and then it's barbecue chicken. So that's the fear for the Lakers. I don't think they're going to come in game 2 and be as, shell-shocked. They're going to come in desperate because they know if they already lost home court advantage. Now, if they lose game 2 at home, it becomes very concerning because Minnesota's energy isn't going to let down because Minnesota's roster personality has always been they're very good at being the hunters, really bad at being the hunted. That's the biggest thing with the Timberwolves, and they are the hunters this series. So Minnesota's going to bring the intensity. The Lakers, I expect it to game 2, but it's a really concerning game for the Lakers because not only did Minnesota play harder, they just looked like the more talented team once you just get over the name and the brand of the Lakers roster.
I felt like the second quarter of this game was really where everything you laid out was kind of magnified. The Minnesota team goes and scores 38 points on this Lakers defense. And this doesn't really feel like a series to me that we're just going to emphasize the bigs as much. I feel like it's going to be more perimeter based. And on the offensive end, it seems like, well, maybe it's true that Luka is going to have a good series. It's also true at the same time that though this wasn't a great day for Anthony Edwards, that the Lakers don't have a great assignment for him either. And the role players, as you and I talked about before the show, it does seem like Minnesota has 7 of the 10 best players in the series. The Lakers might have the best and the second best, possibly, but LeBron is also dealing with this injury, and he wasn't moving as well as you would expect. Looked a little bit slower, and I feel like that is a pretty big part of this I didn't expect coming in. When I took the Lakers in 7, if I had known that, it would have definitely influenced my decision-making a little bit. So I would say for Minnesota, it's true that they're not going to shoot 50% from 3 every single game, but it seems like both teams don't necessarily have great one-on-one matchups, and I feel like this will be the worst game that Anthony Edwards plays in this series. So when you influence that on top of the fact that on the ball they have so much help defense, I think it can kind of tire out LeBron and this Laker team a little bit. This is going to be the series to me, which I have the hardest time predicting. I feel like it's going to be a back and forth match, or maybe see an unexpected win by the Lakers in game 2. So I'm not entirely sure what to expect of Julius Randle or Naz Reid, but I do think that what we saw from Jaden McDaniels was the biggest key. If he can continue to be as efficient as he was, it gives this Minnesota squad a way better chance, and that is where they can completely take this series over and maybe win in 5 or 6.
Known playoff riser Jaden McDaniels, career 47% from 3 in the playoffs now. Jaden McDaniels, man, you have my heart and soul. But that is, I think, a great point. I think the depth really matters in this series because not only does Minnesota have 7 of the 10 best players in this series, but a lot of those guys you can throw at LeBron, you can throw at Austin Reeves. So if Minnesota, it's kind of like the Denver Nuggets series last year, a lot like the Phoenix Suns series. I said early this series, this Lakers team is very similarly built to that Phoenix Suns team last year. More upside, more playmaking, more IQ, but it's the 3 one-way stars and then everybody else. And Minnesota doesn't have to worry about taking out Luka Doncic. Make life hell for Austin Reeves. This is his first time being a guy in the playoffs. He had that one cute playoff run against Memphis that surprised everybody. But there's a difference between being the hunter and the hunted. Austin Reeves is the hunted, and Minnesota is going to take him out. That's what they're going to look to do. And then LeBron, he's age 41 after a full season. Make the guy run. Make the guy tired. That's what they're going to be focused on. That's what they did game one, and that's what they'll continue to do. Luka Doncic is going to get whatever he wants because there's literally not one good matchup for him in the NBA. The best matchup is probably Lou Dort or OG Anunoby. And they're the big, long, physical wings. And there's very few of those in the NBA. Mm-hmm. So just let him get going, close everybody else out. And I think if Minnesota does that, they're going to win the series. Especially, we could say Anthony Edwards wasn't efficient, but that was very designed by the Lakers. Edwards struggles finishing at the rim in crowds, and the Lakers kept throwing crowds at him. But Anthony Edwards, to his credit, was making the right read every single time. So 9 assists, 1 turnover. And outside of Julius Randle, the entire team had 3 total turnovers. So that's going to be the big difference. If Anthony Edwards is making those reads and getting those assists, that's when Minnesota is the most well-oiled machine, and that's going to position him better for late in games when they can't throw the same traps at him when the confidence of a deeper roster is really propelling. That's why I picked Minnesota to win the series, because I just decided Phoenix last year, the full week off for Anthony Edwards to figure out that type of defense made a big difference as a decision maker, and it was a very similar given circumstance this year. And we saw that decision making, that playmaking really shine today, or yesterday now. And if he keeps doing that, his offensive leap is going to really shine as the series goes. I think his scoring efficiency is really going to hit a stride if he continues making those reads.
I like that. This is what kind of confuses me, because Julius Randle did have 7 turnovers yesterday. I thought it was funny how you had to preface without Julius Randle. How does he fit into this equation? Where does he kind of fit into this puzzle? Because last year they had Cat, who did all of the dirty work and also was an elite shooter and someone that could create a lot of advantages as a driver, pulling out bigs into space. But I always felt this year the Julius Randle fit was odd with Rudy Gobert, because Randle likes to operate in the elbows, and I feel like there's too much congestion there. Had 7 turnovers to 5 assists yesterday. What is the idea of him, and how does he fit in, and what makes him? Because I don't think he's a better option than Naz Reid at this point. Just what is he going to have to do, and how is he going to integrate into this in order for the T-Wolves to go on a real playoff run?
I think the best trait that Julius Randle has is his ability to create open shots for shooters. Because when he's physical, when he's getting to the rim, and you have to throw multiple bodies at him, he's the best player on the team at finding the open shooter while penetrating to the rim. And that's why Minnesota kept winning with him the last 26. I think they're 23-4 in their last 27 games with Julius Randle. And a big part of that is he gets shooters open. It's a big reason why Minnesota goes from a league average shooting team last year to a top 5 shooting team, despite losing Karl Anthony Towns. Julius Randle is significantly better at getting open shooters shots. So Minnesota can shoot more of them at easier, more advantageous spots. And I think that's the value of Julius Randle. And he had turnovers. I thought a couple times he forced his will. I thought in the second half he calmed down and did a pretty good job moving the ball the second half. If he can just continue leveraging his playmaking for his scoring more than vice versa, I think he can be a really big threat this series. It's just don't go too much into the I'm trying to prove it to you, the team that drafted me, the team that let me go, and just try to score on them. It's not what Minnesota needs. Minnesota wins the series if they're the better ball-moving team. And they were game one, and Julius Randle was a part of that. Just got to continue leaning into that skill.
And I feel like it really helped, too, when he's going 4 of 6 from three-point land, because the open corner threes are going to be there. With the Knicks, he obviously didn't get as many of them because of his role, but If
Yeah.
that's an opportunity that he's given consistently, I think that does kind of allow the fit to kind of fit in better as well. So
Yeah, he's done a good job this year just grounding his game, I would say, especially in the second half this year because he was trying to do way too much the first 20 games this year. So, yeah, I think I'm very curious to see how he continues responding. The Lakers are very very lazy on closeouts and that helped Minnesota. Like I said, I think they were shell shocked and it took them a little while to get out of it. So I don't expect that game too. But if Minnesota keeps moving the ball the way they were, which allows Randall and Ant to not get doubled, that's when they're going to play at their best. If it becomes an isolation game, you have Ant and you have Randall and the other team has Luka and LeBron, you're going to lose that every time. They need to lean into that energy. They need to lean into that defense and they need to lean into that shooting. And if they do that, then they're playing to their strengths. Just don't try to play like the Los Angeles Lakers. But like I said, Wolves in 6.
I like that. Now we're gonna go to
Pistons Knicks. That game gave basically all the positives and negatives for both teams in a very big way. Number one, the majority of the game, the Pistons are controlling the game. They're playing harder, they're playing more intense, they're more physical, they're getting rebounds, they're doing Detroit Pistons things. But then late in the game, the obvious turning point was the 21-0 run. And that shined for both teams. The Knicks have significantly more talent. They're also the softer team. But at the end of the day, talent wins. And they were able to generate late shots. Karl Anthony Towns in the fourth quarter was fantastic. And for the Pistons, your second option is Malik Beasley. Your first option just made his playoff debut. You have a lot of fun athletes who can't shoot. And the Pistons, they just can't generate enough offense when things get difficult. And that's why I never really believed in them in a playoff setting because they're just not talented enough offensively. And I think we felt that tension late. Cunningham didn't shoot the ball particularly well this game. And if he gets guarded as aggressively as he was later, he's not going to shoot well this series. So it's really up to the other guys for the Pistons to get open shots, to make them take that pressure off Cade Cunningham. It's just a lot to ask because the talent on that roster offensively is very finite. And at the end of the day, you need a certain amount of offensive talent to beat a team as talented as the New York Knicks. And in the fourth quarter, we saw that immaturity and we saw that offensive limitation scoring-wise. So I just thought game one for that series kind of showed where both teams are exactly.
Yeah, and I felt the most fun part about that 21-0 run that you highlighted in the fourth quarter is that it was fueled by none other than Campaign, who has continued to be a spark plug and kind of energizer bunny for years now, dating back to his time with the Suns, where let's say Javon or whether it was Javon Carter or any backup guard in Phoenix struggling, he would come and spell them play well. And in this game, Deuce McBride struggles quite a bit, and you go to someone who is not going to get consistent minutes, and he has 11 points. I think it was 15 and fourth. Or 15 total. That is something that the Knicks may not get night to night, but at the same time, it wasn't a great game by Brunson, where he still finishes, even for his standards, a bad playoff game with what was 34 points. And I felt like for the Knicks, it kind of was emblematic of just how in this series, they present a lot of matchup nightmares. You have OG Anunoby, who in the first half has 19 points and does an amazing job defending Cade Cunningham. He only finishes with 23, but then him and Cat as well kind of add an extra layer to their offense, being able to finish plays at a high level. And you kind of highlighted that this Piston team is at a point where they make the playoffs this year as a top 5, top 6 seed. And I think everyone looks at it as an amazing accomplishment this year and a hugely successful season, given where they were at this time last year.
Yeah.
But in a road playoff game like this, where Malik Beasley goes 6 of 12 from three-point land, Cade Cunningham struggles, yes, but Tobias Harris, he has in the first half almost 20 points. And then you get a great game from Tim Hardaway Jr. as well as streaky. To lose that game where in the first half, all three of them are contributing, and really Tobias had 22 in the first on 10 shots, that is the game that the Pistons need most. And the fact that they lost it in such an unexpected display. They were winning in the fourth quarter. They had the lead, and then next thing you know, the Knicks go on this insane run, and they
Yep.
take complete control of the game. If that is what the Knicks build off, this series could be a sweep. Now, I
Yeah.
don't know if the Knicks are going to play with that same level of intensity and desire and will, because they're also playing at home in MSG, but the Pistons needed that win badly if they wanted the series to go to 6 or 7 games. And that's what I said with the Nuggets and Clippers. I'm like, if the Nuggets make this comeback in a game where they're shooting poorly, I think that doesn't bode well for the Clippers, who look so good. And I think that's comparative to the Pistons, where you're not going to get that same shooting display night tonight from Malik Beasley, THJ, and Tobias as well.
I think that's a great point because all of those guys were on this game for the
Mhm.
majority of it, and they still couldn't generate offense when the Knicks went on that run. That's the scary thing. I don't think this team is going to be able to consistently diffuse runs for that youth, for their limitations on the roster outside of Cade Cunningham in terms of shot creation. That is a very concerning trend. I still, it's funny. It's a hot take. I still think this series, I think the Pistons will still take a game or two. I really do. I've just seen it in the New York Knicks DNA. They have the nice guy DNA, and I don't think they're going to squish the Pistons like a bug. I just don't think they will. I don't think it's in their DNA. And I think the Pistons going back home in Detroit, they're going to be really motivated, play really hard. And even though OG Anunoby is like the best Cade Cunningham matchup because Cunningham can't bounce off of him with his strength, I still think they're going to have a game at least in which they really show up. And the Knicks won't bring the same intensity. I've seen it too much with the Knicks this year. And I still think this won't be a sweep. I really don't.
Neither do I. I think when I say it's more a matter of taking advantage of opportunity when it's there, and the Pistons show with their experience that they could not at this point. But I also had the Knicks in 6 games. I mean, this Detroit team plays with too much physicality and intensity to me to not kind of ruffle the Knicks in one of these matchups. And when that happens, they're going to get a much better version of Cage from a shooting standpoint, because maybe he's not able to get to the rim as much, but we saw he has some pretty explosive nights to pull up shooter. And I think that, or a outside creator, and I think that is where the Pistons will at least get one game to make it a competitive series. Now, shall we talk about the games and the slate that we have today on Easter Sunday? Because I think that one matchup I'm looking forward to is Rockets Warriors. You have a very similar type of series. The Young Buds going up against an experienced, polished team. And I feel like one team is kind of looking to prove themselves in the Warriors while the other has been a little bit overlooked by being the second seed.
The Rockets might be the most disrespected number 2 seed in the last 5+ years in the West. Being a number 2 seed in the Western Conference is a big accomplishment. And they're a good clutch team. They're a great defensive team. And they're a deep team. Those are usually pretty positive indicators. But I think all of us look at this Rockets team and we're like, this is your first time here. You don't have a superstar. Jalen Green, Alperen Sengun can be stars on a given night, but they're not top 25 guys by any stretch of the imagination. So I think we all look at it like, okay, a team that lacks star power, a team that doesn't shoot great, and you're playing against Stephen Curry and a rising Warriors team that was one of the best teams in the NBA after acquiring Jimmy Butler. And I think it's reasonable to expect the Warriors to win the series. I think they're going to win the series. I think the Rockets' lack of shooting is going to affect them, especially late in games. And it's their first time there. How grounded will Jalen Green be in a playoff setting? He's the single biggest X factor in the Western Conference this first round because Jalen Green is the one guy on the Rockets capable of dropping 45 in a game. Mm-hmm. The space creation, the shot making on the right night, the explosiveness. He's a special talent on the right night. The problem is, on the wrong night, he's a living disaster. And what Jalen Green are you getting? The Rockets need the absolute best version, Jamal Murray-esque level of Jalen Green, because if they don't, they certainly don't have the firepower. And he has the talent to. It's just the floor for Jalen Green's tough every night, and they're probably going to throw guys like Gary Payton and Jimmy Butler on him. He's going to get the Warriors' best defensive options, and for a skinny kid with not a lot of strength, that's a lot to ask for him. But if he can consistently hit jump shots and open it up, it's going to propel everything for the Rockets. And that is their only hope, in my opinion, for them to win the series. Jalen Green needs to be excellent.
Absolutely, because he is one of, if not the most streaky volume scorer in the NBA. And even at that, when I say volume score, it's someone averaging 21 points a game. The Rockets' record this season when he scores 30 or more points is 13-1. But in games where he scores under 20, they're nearly 500 at 18-16. And like you highlighted, there's not another guy who can step up and have monster scoring games, because I don't expect this to be an Alperen Şengün series.
No.
You have Draymond Green, who we saw versus Sacramento 2 years ago, put Sabonis in a straitjacket offensively for the better part of that series. And Şengün reminds me of Sabonis, where he has more touch with his floaters and post work. I think he's a worse finisher than Sabonis, but he, in that shallow area, can do a better job. Still don't think he's going to have a great series. This gets Draymond Green. The elixir that gives the Warriors the edge is Jimmy Butler, because physically he matches what Dillon Brooks and Amen Thompson and Tari Eason are going to bring for 48 minutes. And I think that's going to be a lot of chaos. And the Rockets want to force the Warriors to turn over the ball a lot. That's been a staple and the biggest weakness of the Warriors regime is Steph Curry. They throw the ball all over the gym. And this matchup, the issue with that is that you have Jimmy Butler, who stabilizes things. Since they brought him in, they've been in the top half of the league in turnovers committed. So that amplifies the Warriors' ability to get good shots, create open looks, and mitigate mistakes. And if you're not making many of them, it makes things very hard for this Rocket team that wants to win on the margins. Because we all know their strength is not going to be shot making. It's not going to be shot creation with Fred VanVleet and Dillon Brooks. It's going to be the best offensive rebounding team in the NBA for 48 minutes. We're going to get a lot of transition points. And on top of those two things, we're going to do a good enough job at forcing you into taking these tough looks and really just getting shots that aren't high percentage quality opportunities to score. And I feel like in this particular series, you have the best player in Steph, you have the second best player in Jimmy, and you can have the third best player in Draymond Green. And that's not looking at things in a very straightforward way. It's highlighting how each of those three players provide everything that you need to win a playoff series. What Jimmy Butler and Draymond Green bring defensively to me, I think is going to highlight some vulnerabilities. Is Jabari Smith going to make his shots? If you're playing Alperen Şengün with Amen Thompson, I think they need to Ime Udoka needs to incorporate it Amen a lot on the ball, because if he is off it, I'm a firm believer that the Warriors will choose to let him take perimeter shots, and that's where Amen Thompson's value will diminish. So it's going to be an Ime Udoka series where he has to figure out a couple of different things to make the spacing work. And I do wonder if he tries out the double big lineup. If he says, maybe things aren't working, they're down in the second half, what if we play together Steven Adams and Alperen Şengün?
And just beat them up.
And I think that is something which would remind me of that Mavericks-Clippers series some years ago where the Mavs were starting by Boban, and next thing you know, they're trying to outduel each other with a very out-of-the-blue wild card. So I think that's a particular thing they could go to, because when they've played in limited minutes, it's been one of the best point differentials of any lineup in the NBA.
The next biggest X factor on the Rockets outside of Jalen Green, and I'm surprised we mentioned this guy so late, it's Amen Thompson. Stephen Curry had 3 points being guarded by Amen Thompson the other week.
Yep.
He is the biggest physical matchup nightmare for Steph Curry. He's a physical matchup nightmare for everybody in the NBA because he's probably the best athlete in the NBA.
He is.
6'7", his strength, his speed, his timing. He's got great feel on defense.
Explosiveness and length.
Steph is not going to create a lot of consistent space on him and Thompson. The best hope he can have is your team sets really good epping screens, and you can trick him with your timing, get him jump in the air a lot to create space. Because otherwise, Amen Thompson is the biggest Steph stopper in the NBA, because how many guys allow Steph Curry to score 3 points in a basketball game? So if the Rockets could take Steph Curry out of the series on top of Jalen Green playing well, they're going to win the series. That's their formula. Because I agree, Alperen Şengün is probably not going to have a great series. He's kind of a soft basketball player.
Ooh, okay.
I just said it.
Wow.
He's a flopper and he's a crier. He is. And Draymond Green on the block is going to be mean to him, and he's not going to get calls, and he's going to get in his head about it. That's what Alperen Şengün does. So if they get into Alperen Sengun's head, which I think is highly possible with the Warriors whistle in the playoffs with Draymond Green. They need Jalen Green and Ahmed Thompson to go out. And John, you were shocked when I called him soft.
Mm-hmm. I was. I mean, this is my thing. He reminds me of as a post scorer Pau Gasol, where Pau before he got to the Lakers was called soft. I think he's a tough basketball player. I wouldn't call him soft personally. And I think
he's a crier, dude.
Him being one of the strongest players in the NBA, him being someone that can move people, it's a lot like Sabonis, but he's not as strong as Sabonis, don't get me wrong. I think that we do underestimate him just a little bit. I don't know what it is, but I remember people said back in the day about Pau Gasol. Then he got to the Lakers and he's put up 18-plus rebound games in the finals. People saying that ain't soft.
Alperen Sengun, though, is one of those players who kind of comes off as one of those guys who he's going to get physical with you. He's going to try to trick you, and if it doesn't work, he gets into his head. That's just my watch when I watch him do it. He's a very emotional player. He's emotional, and you can beat him up when you get him out of his game. He's like the bully who punches and you punch back, he cries. Is that bully soft? You can argue. That's my read on Alperen Sengun.
Jokic was flopping though yesterday, and there have been moments in different playoff series where he's gotten into his.
Jokic is a flopper, yeah, but he's not.
I think he's one of the toughest players I've ever seen.
Nikola Jokic is a straight killer, though. What has Alperen Sengun shown to be a straight killer yet?
Was a league MVP and draft league and 17 years old.
I mean,
that's a killer.
That's Turkey. He's in the NBA now.
Fair enough.
He's in the NBA now. It's his first time in this big moment. We'll see. Okay, well, I'll tell you this: if he keeps his cool against Draymond Green, I'll take back everything I said. I just don't anticipate it, and that's just my point. He's very he gets his head out of the game pretty easily sometimes, especially when it comes to his desire in manipulating the refs with some of his movements, and then he freaks out when he doesn't get it. And then he starts getting a little chippy and emotional. I consider that soft. That's just me. But
the question is resilience. And I understand that better. I think we talked about a lot of X factors of this Rocket team because you don't know what you're getting with Houston this year. They were a dominant regular season team. They play with a defensive intensity that will absolutely be transparent in the postseason. That's not going to change. There's Jalen Green. That's a big X factor. There's Amen Thompson. That's a variable that can completely put a ripple effect in this.
Ahmed Thompson can completely change the series.
You know who can also change the series?
Who?
You go first.
If Ahmed Thompson is guarding Stephen Curry and he's being an effective decision maker with the ball in his hands, that helps the Rockets a lot. Ahmed Thompson, in my opinion, is the best player on the Rockets. And if he can be the best player on the Rockets this series, and Jalen Green can also elevate his game, that's how they win the series.
The last X factor, and there's a few, is Dillon Brooks. We talked about before Julius Randle, who was an infamous playoff disappointment, letdown, and choke artist. And quite frankly, his true shooting percentage in the playoffs was so bad, it would be relative to what guys are shooting in the 1940s, which is pretty embarrassing. But number 2 on the worst true shooting percentage list in the last 5 years in the playoffs is none other than Dillon Brooks, who last 5 years, it's actually the last 4 because he played well in the 21 playoffs. Anyways, and the last 2 times that we saw him in the playoffs, and in that 2023 series versus the Lakers, he was so bad that the Lakers left him open, said you're not going to hit these threes, and he couldn't hit water from a boat. Then the Grizzlies said, you know what? We're not bringing you back under any circumstance. That, for a player who was possibly, arguably, one of the best 3-and-D wings, they then didn't replace him. They did Marcus Smart when they traded him. And he goes to the Rockets and has shot 40% the last 2 years and helped them go from bottom 5 to top 5 defense. But we still don't know if he's going to sustain and build off that level of shooting in the postseason where we've seen him be very streaky. And I think that epitomizes why I have the Warriors winning the series in 6 games. I know that Steph's going to have a couple of down nights, but Jimmy Butler, they don't have an answer for him. I don't care if Dillon Brooks is a good defender who plays physical. Jimmy Butler will rip him apart. And I think in many series like this, if you've got someone who pokes a bear at LeBron James, you'll have LeBron go crazy. If he tries some funny stuff from Jimmy Butler, I could see him tearing him apart. We saw Jimmy have 38 points, go to the foul line 18 times when the Grizzlies dared to put Zach Edey on him because they didn't want to get Jaren Jackson in foul trouble. He will put you in foul trouble. I don't think Dillon Brooks fouls a lot. He does not. But Jimmy Butler will take over the series. And if he has to, he'll be the Warriors' best player, most productive player if they have to win. So I think that's what makes this fun. I hope Dylan Brooks starts to play a little bit Jimmy, because I want to see that version of playoff Jimmy.
The Rockets and the Warriors have arguably two of the chippiest rosters in the league, some of the biggest barkers in the Western Conference.
Mm-hmm.
And it's going to be very fun to see fire and fire clash that way. Would you be surprised if we have a fight in this series?
No.
I could easily see a fight happening.
I don't see the benches clearing though. I think that's
I think there's gonna be multiple like physical moments and technicals, and I don't think there's gonna be a malice at the palace, but I do think there's going to be a couple of moments. I think Dylan Brooks will get into it. I think Draymond will get into it. I think Butler probably gets into it. Tari Eason is obviously a firecracker too. So it's a fun physical series. I think both teams probably respect each other's intensity, but it's the youth and the depth versus the veterans and the star power. And who wins? I'll bet on the veterans and the star power.
Yeah. And also, last thoughts for the Warriors. Eric Potts is a rebound, the best he ever has in his life, because he's their best positional defender. And I know that Jonathan Kuminga's been in the doghouse. On a series which invokes chaos and maybe not as many good decisions, I think it's the right setting for Jonathan Kuminga to get an opportunity to get some burn. So don't be surprised to see him matching up with Cam Whitmore or Tari Eason, because they need that explosiveness. And if they have none of that, then they're going to call his number.
I love it. And let's transition to, I would say, the Thunder-Memphis series. I think that one's going to be really interesting today. Memphis has just been off of a cliff, but we know this with this Memphis team. They started the year 36-18, and they fell off since then. That talent is still in there. Now, Oklahoma City, I'll just say it, I expect them to win the series pretty quickly, just because I think this is the best team in the NBA right now. And I think the depth, I think Shea's on a mission. I think, it'll be really fun to see Chet and J-Dub in this playoff setting this year, like a second time go around. I think Jalen Williams is really in for an incredible postseason run. As I said the other week,
I agree.
Baby Kawhi. And
I think he's baby Jimmy.
I think he's got a higher ceiling than Jimmy.
Okay.
I just think he's a more talented offensive player. I think he's a more talented shooter. I think he's more polished at the same stage. I think he's a more talented player than Jimmy. I'm not saying he's better right now, but I think his ceiling is definitely higher. I think his ceiling's definitely higher. So I'm still going with Kawhi Leonard. Everybody's scared to say that, but I'm here to say it. So what do you think so far going into this series?
So right now their games are started at 1 p.m. and I'm immediately putting this on. My two thoughts initially that we need the Ja Morant and the Zaki that we got in their second playing game. Ja didn't look right at first in the matchup versus the Warriors. It seemed like his ankle was really bothering him, and they had to get him with some injections, make sure he was right to play last game so he didn't feel his ankle, he told Scott Van Pelt on ESPN. And I feel like if the Grizzlies aren't getting playoff job, this is going to be a sweep. It doesn't matter how well Desmond Bane plays. And Jaren Jackson may make a lot of threes. Ja Morant is the type of playoff performer who puts so much pressure on the rim that it alleviates the pressure off of a good cast of role players. Mm-hmm. But the entire system is going to malfunction if he is not that elite rim attacker. So I have the Thunder winning the series in 5 games. Wouldn't be surprised if it goes to 6. I think the biggest issue is that, well, the Grizzlies for years were this elite defense. Then they trade all of their point of attack defenders. Yeah. They have played Vince Williams, who might be their best option. They don't have a prayer for guarding Shea. And we've seen Tomas Islo, their interim coach, be very transparent, straightforward in his post-game pressers. It's going to be very interesting to see if Jaren picks up some fouls. I mean, they didn't want to put him on Jimmy for that exact reason. You've got Shea, who was second in the NBA this year in free throw attempts. I wonder if on switches they get a couple of ticky fouls, they get Jaren out the game, and the next thing you know, Jake LaRavia and Zach Edey are being pulled out into space by Chet Holmgren. So I think there's a lot of mismatches stylistically between these two teams. And honestly, I hate to say it, but the Grizzlies still don't have the roster construction to really keep up. So I've got Thunder winning this comfortably and going to the finals, and they are my finals pick this year. I guess I should highlight that because I have it on the show. My finals pick this year is Cavaliers Thunder and taking a leap of faith. And I don't think, quite frankly, any team can match up with Oklahoma City's top 4, top 5, and also their perimeter defense is the best that I maybe have ever seen.
They have I think Ja Morant's in for a tough series. They just have so many bodies they can throw at Ja. It's like Lou Dort, okay, cool. If he's too quick for Lou Dort, cool. We'll throw Alex Caruso on you. Casey Wallace could do some damage. Shea's one of the best defensive
Now try
superstars.
Jalen Williams, who's second team.
Jalen Williams, like there's so many guys they could throw at him. And Jaren Jackson Jr., Jaren Jackson's another guy who struggles with, I'll say nicely, resilience. And the Thunder are going to throw bodies at him. Chet's physical. I think Chet's a tougher player. Hartenstein and Jaren Jackson is going to probably average like 4 rebounds a game this series. Just seeing what he does usually. And Zach Edey, look, I mean, his size can be a great advantage at times. OKC has enough size, but they can also space him out. Mm-hmm. So I think this is going to be a really tough series for Zach Edey. And you just look at that bench. It's so young and so inexperienced. I think Scottie Pippen Jr. will play well, but Vince Williams has been really up and down. Hasn't shown the same defensive presence this year as he did in a rebuilding year with Memphis. So they just don't have a lot of guys they can throw at the Thunder. They don't have, I would say, the offensive optionality. Desmond Bane needs to be great this series because he's the one guy who I think won't struggle as much with the Thunder physicality. Mm-hmm. And there might be less pressure on him because they're going to take out Ja. They're going to take out Jaren Jackson Jr. So Desmond Bane really needs to be great this series. If Memphis pushes this to a 6 or 7 game series, that's just where I stand on the series. I just think OKC's too deep. They have too many options. And I think this series for Memphis, how well does Desmond Bane play? And how much do they resist the disadvantages they have in the front court?
Yeah, Zach Edey, too, like you highlighted. They're running a little bit of actions through him in this game. They need him to finish plays. I mean, that Warrior game, I think he missed 4 or 5 putbacks and lobs. He needs to be more efficient. And if he is, I think he can make a big mark because they're going to, and I think we all knew this. This is why people are skeptical to have him as a lottery pick. His ability to be pulled out into space and then get beaten to the rim. I mean, the size and the length is great until you have teams really trying to exploit him in a foot race to the cup. So there's a give and a take that the Grizzlies have to balance here. So I think that'll be a very interesting thing to monitor in the first round.
And going to Zach Edey really needs to figure it out offensively. I mean, he was the best offensive player in college basketball last year. And of course, he had such a size advantage and he can get to those hooks. I think he's got really good natural touch where if you're missing 4 or 5 layups in a game for him, it's unacceptable. He doesn't have Rudy Gobert hands. He's got good hands. Figure out how to space the floor long term. Figure out how to get to your consistent hook. I mean, watch Zubac on the Clippers. I think that's a great ceiling comp for Zach Edey. Keep the game simple. Don't miss those easy shots. That's what made a 17 rebound game against the Warriors so frustrating for Grizzlies fans because it's like, yeah, he's controlling the game. He's showing good signs of what he's good at as a rookie, but he's going to get exploited in space in a series like this. And in moments like that, show your offensive talent at 7'4". That's how you cancel out the small ball looks he'll get, is if he's absolutely overwhelming in the paint. And he has that potential to be. And he needs to be really good offensively this series. He needs to be dynamic because if he doesn't, he's going to be a massive liability.
I do think that Hartenstein's a tough physical matchup.
It's a tough matchup. He's going to throw bodies at Edey.
Yeah. Now, I guess we'll kind of cruise through the remaining ones that we have. Yeah. The first one, which we have the Cavaliers versus the Heat. The Heat had an awesome play-in victory, a pair of play-in victories. First 10 seed
Hero was great.
The playoffs. And the plan's been around for 5 years now. I believe that Miami's found a formula with Davion Mitchell and Wiggins coming in, being good additions, and then Bam Adebayo, playoff Bam. They called me crazy on pick aside when I told them the truth. Domantas Sabonis is not on Bam Adebayo's level.
Duh.
We saw that manifest because the Kings are getting blown out by 25 versus the Mavericks who don't even have a guard. I feel like we see so often, I don't want to make this a Kings thing or a Kings rant. We overestimate Bam Adebayo and what he can bring defensively, but this Miami team has been able to sustain a top 10 defense after trading Jimmy Butler, and I think that's a testament to the guard play that Davion has brought them, and I do think that they can steal a game from Cleveland here because of it's the same thing I say with the Pistons, the intensity that they play with, they're not going to relent, and they have a great coach who I think is going to amplify some of their offensive player strengths. And that, of course, starts and ends with Tyler Hero, who's been absolutely clutch in these critical games. So I'm really happy to see him ball on such a high level.
I think the Miami Heat are going to give some problems to the Cavaliers. I have the Cavs winning the series in 6, though. I think the Heat are going to bring some trouble. Tyler Hero was excellent in the play-in, and this is his opportunity to show that he can be a star in the playoffs as a primary guy. And I think he's going to do it because I saw a young Tyler Hero in the bubble dropping 37 in big playoff games.
Yep.
He has it in him. And a Bam Adebayo who's been trending up in the second half of the year. Yeah, Domantas Sabonis isn't close to Bam Adebayo. There's just so much more two-way portability with Bam. And just a playoff resume, it's not close. It's genuinely not close.
Yeah.
Domantas Sabonis is a one-dimensional scorer as a one-dimensional offensive player. That's just all I have to say about Domantas Sabonis.
Yeah.
I think Mobley's the better big in this series by a slight margin. But I do think between he and Tyler Hero, they have some ammunition. And it's so funny because I think Davion Mitchell is like the best physical matchup to Donovan Mitchell because they literally have the same exact body. So I think
same last name.
Same last
Not
name.
related, non-Aaron. It's a lot like Aaron and Andrew Wiggins. Yeah.
Same number in college, same shooting form, right?
Like 45 Miami.
I think Davion Mitchell is going to give some trouble for Donovan Mitchell. I think Mitchell's going to get his regardless, but I think he can resist enough where he doesn't average 40 this series, which Donovan Mitchell has done in the past. And I still need to see Darius Garland just what does he look like in a playoff setting? We mentioned Julius Randle, we mentioned other guys. Darius Garland hasn't been a very impressive playoff player yet. And I think he needs a great series this time, and he's probably going to be guarded by Andrew Wiggins. So that's a tough physical matchup. That size and that length in a playoff setting. I think that the Heat are going to give the Cavaliers some offensive trouble with the defensive options they have. And because Miami is so well coached, they have experienced players. I think they're going to take 2 games in the series.
A lot of Heat fans think they can win this thing. And while I'm not going to go that far, it's fandom speaking, I do think there's truth that they do match up well. And I don't know, I have this superstition that like things tend to repeat themselves, lend themselves. And on pick a side, we had Ty Jerome on, and I asked him the question if this Heat team reminded him of or if this Cavalier team reminded him of Virginia. That was a 1 seed that got knocked down in the first round of 2018. They come back in 2019 and 1 seed again and won the entire national title. So I think some people that are superstitious might compare the two teams, and maybe the Heat history is going to lend itself, and the Virginia Cavos that we saw DeAndre Hunter and Ty Jerome will manifest again here. But don't get me wrong, I think it's going to be a 5-gamer. The Heat can easily take a game because I think it's going to be a close series. It might be like Celtics Pacers last year where they have to really pull it out Cleveland. As to the last series, it's perfect that I'm under a time crunch here because we don't have to talk much about this. I think the Celtics are sweeping Magic. God bless Orlando. It's a tough spot to be in. Dwight Howard thinks they're winning. Good luck with that take. I don't think it's really particularly close. The Celtics, it might be the most lopsided series we've seen in some time. I think they're going to not only sweep, but they might embarrass Orlando.
If you can't shoot in the playoffs and you're playing the best shooting team in the league,
it's going to get ugly fast.
That's the problem. I think the Magic could provide some trouble for the Celtics physically. I think Paolo and Franz. I think those guys. After that,
Anthony Black and
they're a top 5.
Joseph.
They're a top 5 defense in the league this year. You know, obviously
they are. They don't have Jalen Suggs.
Top 5 team in the league. I mean, they have. They have pretty good length on that roster. Anthony Black was really rising in the second half of the year.
He has been. He's been playing better.
You have Isaac still. I think Isaac's playing the series, right? I mean, yeah, he's playing the series. You have Wendell Carter. I mean, they have good length, and that's a good identity for this Magic team, but they can't frickin' shoot. And I think Isaac needs to be huge in this series. I think Franz needs to be huge.
KCP needs to hit a 3. If he can do that, that's why they paid him $20 million.
Yep, I've just kind of forgotten about him because he hasn't been there this year. But I think the Magic might take a game. They might take a game. I'm not a huge fan of predicting sweeps for teams that are top 5 on one side of the basketball. So I think the Magic might take a game.
Bad as a shooting team. I'm going to cut you off. What if it's like the worst shooting team?
They're historically bad as a shooting team.
Then what?
I
think that counts it all off. And they've had injuries too. Like if Jalen Suggs is playing, I think they can get a game.
That's true. That's true. It's just I'm going to say they might take a game, but yeah, they don't have a chance this series because when you're playing the best shooting team in the NBA and you're the worst shooting team in the NBA, it's kind of goes as simple as that, quite frankly. So I have the Celtics in 5. I still think Paolo Banchero could have a crazy playoff game despite the spacing. He's been excellent in the second half of the year, by the way.
Game. Fantastic. Yep.
Efficient too, near 60 true shooting, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah. I don't want to short sell that. He's been amazing.
If you can get a good version of Franz and Paolo, and the Celtics have one off game from 3, they could win a game. But I'm not going much further than that. So it's going to be an interesting series. The Magic probably have to revamp that entire roster this summer around Paolo and Franz because when your 2 best players are 6'10", 2-level creators, frankly, you can't surround them with non-shooters. It's frankly the stupidest thing you can do. So they need to make some big changes this offseason, but they might get a game. I'm saying this optimistically as somebody who really believes in those 2. Huh?
It's a very bold take of you to say.
As somebody who really believes in those 2, they might take a game.
Yeah, I'm a huge ball guy. I'm messing with you, but
yeah, man. All right, but yeah, I agree. I think this is the easiest series to predict. It's going to be a quick one. I just hope the Magic have one good game. Let's go home with something.
I'm hoping Paolo and Franz. I'm hoping Franz's shot looks good and Paolo averages 35. And
that'd be a dream. So
getting 60 points in the rest of their lineup and may not matter, and they won't be able to get to 100 points a game.
But even so, like those 2 are very obviously Franz is more finesse, but both are really good at bouncing off of defenders and getting to their shot. I mean, Tatum, Brown, right? Even Al Horford to an extent. The Celtics have guys they can throw at them too. Drew Holiday, obviously, he can guard bigger guys than him. So it's going to be a tough series for the Magic. It's a nightmare. But they're a 7 seed. I mean, a 2 seed is usually significantly better than a 7 seed. So it's not surprising. But yeah, it's going to be a quick series.
Yeah. Fun fact: they went to 7 in the first round last year, while they shot 31% from 3. It's just that the Celtics
have it in better.
The Celtics are a lot better than last year's Cavs team that was banged up. Garland wasn't right. Jared Allen didn't even play in that series. He did play. I just completely lied. He didn't play in the Celtics series, but Garland wasn't right. And, of course, the Magic last year did have Jalen Suggs, and I think that was a big difference on both ends. But neither here nor there. I think that kind of concludes our first round playoff extravaganza, whatever you want to call it. And I think it was probably the most fun I've had in quite some time talking about basketball, so I'm glad we did it.
It was a great day yesterday. Not only did the Lakers go toward my agenda yesterday, but Jaden